Okay, we'll start with this. Veteran content creator Two-Tone the Superstar recently highlighted that Terence Crawford is now facing backlash from the quote-unquote culture for his appearance at UFC Freedom this past weekend in a photo op with President-in-Chief Donald Trump.
He was invited to be there. He was invited to attend.
In doing so, inadvertently politicizing himself and being subject to further polarization. Let's be honest. The culture, as it were, and we all know who we're talking about, has never been behind Terence Crawford. They've never supported him, even though he's the most accomplished American-bred fighter in the sport.
He never had their favor. They always found a reason to tear him down and all that he had accomplished. Initially, it was because he decided to stay with Top Rank, stay on that side of the street, instead of joining Al Haymon's PBC.
When they used to call him Top Rank Toby?
They used to tear him down for that. Then when he exceeds their expectations and easily beats their champion, the guy they did identify with, Errol Spence Jr.,
they started tearing him down for that, claiming that that was the only noteworthy win on his resume. He goes ahead, he becomes a 4-weight world champion by beating Israel Madrimov. They still keep tearing him down.
He jumps up 2 weight classes, takes Canelo Alvarez to school, who was undisputed champion at the time, and they still keep tearing him down. So let's establish that the culture has never fully been behind Terence Crawford from the get.
From the outset, they've always looked for reasons to stand apart, stand against him, and I think that Terence Crawford knows this most of all. He doesn't need me to tell him, or for me to highlight it, how many times he's been underestimated, how many times they've tried to tear him down, to where nothing that he does is to appease that culture.
He's gonna do what he wants to do, irrespective of you.
It was in January of 2022 when VP of Communications at the PBC, Tim Smith, said Spence versus Crawford was not viable because of economics, a fanciful way of saying that he didn't think the fight would sell.
Why would he think that?
Tim Smith of the PBC, who was more accepted by the quote-unquote culture at the time.
PBC, Al Haymon, the whole lot of them.
They didn't think that Crawford versus Spence was commercially viable. Coincidentally, that turned out to be Errol Spence Jr.'s biggest commercial fight. Bigger than anything he'd done so far. The biggest gate for a fight he was ever in. The most pay-per-view buys.
Well, it's almost like Tim Smith and the PBC were using that as an excuse not to make the fight because they had no intention to. Which is neither here nor there, because the point is, the culture has never been behind Terence Crawford.
They weren't behind him back then, and they're still not behind him right now. So if they have anything to say about him, it's nothing new. It's nothing he hasn't seen before. The saving grace for him is he's never tried to appease them.
If he had, he wouldn't be where he is now. 5-weight, 3-time undisputed, 4-time Lineal Ring Magazine champion. That's just not the kind of person.
That ain't the kind of fighter they get behind.
Who the culture gravitates more towards are degenerates and their inherent degeneracy.
Losers.
What, a tattooed woman-beating coward in Gervonta Davis? An alcoholic sex pest in Adrian Broner? These are the kind of fighters that the culture has a soft spot for.
And all their latent homosexual tendencies. I still remember when Adrian Broner tried to plant one right on Gervonta Davis's lips. Coincidentally, he just tried to do that to Dean the Great.
That's what the culture is into. That's what the culture likes. Errol Spence Jr., who they got behind ahead of his fight with Terence Crawford in the 5-year build-up that it took to make it, he's got those same tendencies.
And the alcoholism, and the dysfunction. This is a guy who almost got himself killed for what is his own substance abuse.
That is what they gravitate towards because that is a reflection of who the culture is on an individual level and as a group. No discipline, no real aspirations. Every fighter at the PBC's perverse purview of the sport of boxing and what a boxer should aspire to.
Don't you see that it's not in line with a fighter like Terence Crawford, or Naoya Inoue, or Alexander Usyk, and all those fighters have managed to accomplish within the sport in the last decade, the 3 kings.
The culture doesn't like any of them. I might argue that that's how you know you're doing something right. When they don't like you.
Because they're fucking losers. And they only gravitate towards other dysfunctional, degenerate losers.
The political sphere is so polarizing that as such, any association, even a tenuous one, is now used as ammunition against a public figure like a Terence Crawford. In truth, we don't even know who the man voted for. He was just there in attendance for UFC Freedom.
He was invited. Like Jayo Pataya was invited, like Conor Ben, Tyson Fury was invited.
Alexander Usyk was invited. What was he supposed to do? Say no? Turn them down to appease who? To appease you?
Who the fuck are you?
You're not as important as you think you are, my friend. Not as influential.
Terence Crawford has never been supported by the culture, but look at the fighters that are and how well they're doing.
You're not as important as you think you are, my friend. Not as influential. For years, Terence Crawford was torn down by the culture, so they could readily get behind a Jaron Boots Ennis who hadn't accomplished a fraction of what Terence had accomplished for no other reason than Showtime told them to. Approximately 9 years and 34 fights as a welterweight, and all he had to show for it was a Montes Stanionis.
The culture likes Boots more than they like Crawford.
I don't really know what that's worth, because it's not like Boots is making the money that Crawford made. He probably never will.
I don't really know what that's worth, because it's not like Boots is on the verge of accomplishing what Terence Crawford accomplished. I can tell you right now that when Boots' career is over, he's not going to retire an unbeaten 5-weight world champion, 4-time lineal, 4-time Ring Magazine, 3-time undisputed champion. No, sir.
Nope.
But for whatever reason, the culture likes Boots Ennis more than they like Bud, so what is that really worth?
Not a lot, near as I can tell.
Not much, and there's not much more to it. This is the kind of discernment that you get from the culture, the hierarchy of thought, if you even want to call it thought. They're not big on free spirits, individuals, and critical thinkers.
People who think for themselves. They want you to fall in line with a mob mentality and fall into certain behaviors only to get upset when they're stereotyped.
While perpetuating stereotypes. That's what the culture is good for.
Fucking culture.
A bunch of fucking jackasses. A bunch of fucking losers. It doesn't get said enough. They don't get called that. But that's what they are.
Fucking losers.
Fucking culture. Oh, the culture is mad that Terence...
Fuck you.
Fuck those guys. Fuck those girls. What has the culture ever done for anybody in boxing except steal their fights via their fire sticks?
Who's mad at Terence Crawford?
Members of the culture, leftists and losers.
Well, that's all the same thing.
Just being within proximity of the president-elect puts Terence Crawford in the crosshairs of leftist, loony liberals, pear-shaped losers, would sooner take advice from Elliot Page on how to be a healthy man,
right,
than give you a definitive description of what a woman actually is.
Fucking losers.
These people are mentally ill, and I believe that we are past the point of civil discourse and rational conversation. There are very few good faith arguments left in the political sphere like there are in the boxing sphere. They mirror each other.
One is a microcosm for the other. I say it all the time. Boxing is the ultimate microcosm for life.
So the people that are angry that Terence Crawford was in attendance for UFC Freedom within proximity of Donald J. Trump are people who already didn't like him, and you can't lose something that you never really had. He never really had their favor, their full support.
So he doesn't have it now.
Big fucking deal. Be mad about it. Throw yourselves around your crummy little apartments and see if Crawford cares.
Fuck you.
You're of no use to nobody. Nobody gives a fuck what you do or don't like, because what you do like...
Do you even pay for any of that shit?
And who you don't like.
You don't pay for that shit either. Who you do and don't like is indistinguishable from a commercial perspective, so who really fucking needs you?
Fuck off.
You, blue-haired, pear-shaped, fucking losers.
Liberal, leftist loonies and degenerate criminals using socioeconomic factors as the fallback for why you're such a fucking loser.
Not a loser because you grew up without, because you grew up poor. There are enough success stories out there.
Terence fucking Crawford is a success story, you fucking morons.
But you don't like him because he's not a loser. Like you.
You fucking losers. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Ben Whittaker gives his take on a potential Benavidez versus Bivol fight. The 4 world titles at light heavyweight are split between them, and they're ranked number 5 and number 6 on the Ring's pound-for-pound list. They both cemented their standing as 2 of boxing's best, with one-sided wins in their most recent fights. If the fight is going to be the best version it could be, though, fellow light heavyweight Ben Whittaker believes it needs to happen sooner rather than later. Given Benavidez last fought at cruiser,
Sorry to tell you, Benny boy, but that fight is never going to see the light of day, and it was never going to.
It's a great fight for the division, Whittaker told The Ring. I don't know if it will happen because Benavidez looks big, man. He might be fighting for the WBC title at Cruiser. If he's sitting around that weight for a while, it will be hard to come down, but it's a fight that a lot of people want to see. They've sparred, they've got history, and they're fighters that are not scared to fight. It's all just politics or weight, this and that. But if it does happen, it'll be great to see.
That's what American boxing has devolved into. Politics and weight, which most often come up when American fighters are involved. Consider the age of Dmitry Bivol and his Russian adversary, Artur Beterbiev. Those guys have been at light heavyweight for years, never facing the same struggles that David Benavidez faced, having to move up from super middle to light heavy and light heavy to cruiser. Why is that?
Because a lot of these top shelf Americans are really just cutting massive amounts of weight to fight smaller people. That's why it always comes up with them, more than anybody else.
You don't hear about Dmitry struggling to make weight. You don't hear about it with Artur. David's younger than the both of them, and look at him.
The WBC named David Benavidez the mandatory challenger for cruiserweight champion Noel Mikhailian. Benavidez, 29, jumped Bivol in the ring's pound-for-pound list after he became unified cruiserweight champion with a dominant 6th-round stoppage of Zurdo Ramirez on May 2nd in Vegas.
How fucking stupid is that? Bivol beat that guy first, but David jumps ahead of him for doing it after the fact. And not only that,
Dmitry beat Canelo Alvarez. Dmitry beat Artur Beterbiev, two better names than any name you'll find on David's resume, but who do the Americans put first?
David.
Before stopping Ramirez, the quote-unquote Mexican monster who holds the WBC light heavyweight title along with the WBA and WBO cruiserweight titles, said he'd like to move back down in weight to face Bivol or Artur Beterbiev in September in Las Vegas.
Okay, let's see him do it.
Bivol, 35, holds the Ring Magazine, IBF, WBA, and WBO light heavyweight titles. Fought for the first time in 15 months and won every round on the judges' scorecards against IBF mandatory Michael Eifert. On May 30th, a trilogy bout against the 41-year-old Beterbiev after they split their two fights by majority decision is an option for the Russian. Whittaker, 29, will make his U.S. debut against Richard Riviera on the undercard of Zayas vs. Boots at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, on DAZN pay-per-view and as part of the DAZN Ultimate Tier on June 27th. Whittaker, a 2020 Olympic silver medalist, has won consecutive fights by first-round knockout and hasn't fought beyond the second round in his last 3. Whittaker is ranked number 2 by the WBC, number 3 by the IBF, and number 13 by the WBO. No pressure because I put the pressure on myself to perform, Whittaker said of how he feels ahead of his U.S. debut. That's why I perform the way that I do. But for me, it's just to go out there and win, because you can perform and not win. So for me, wins are all that matter, and if you perform off the back of that, then it's a bonus.
You will have heard me say a lot of this already, that the time and place for David to fight Dmitry or Artur has come and gone. It's not going to happen now. Not with him moving up to cruiserweight, not with him petitioning to fight Noel Mikhailian for a third alphabet title. It's done. It's over.
Those fights ain't going to happen. The time to fight Artur Beterbiev was immediately following David's win over Anthony Yarde, because at that time, Dmitry Bivol was out recovering from back surgery, leaving the door open for David to fight with him. He instead chose to move up to cruiserweight, and he did it rather abruptly.
Remember, the night that he fought Anthony Yarde, he announced he would be moving up to cruiserweight. That same night, which effectively took him out of the running for an Artur Beterbiev fight. In my opinion, he did so quite hurriedly.
It's almost like he didn't want to be available to fight somebody else, somebody like Artur. And if you announced the Zurdo Ramirez fight that night, well, that means that the fight was already made, and you were never going to seriously fight Artur.
Not announcing another fight with another guy over 6 months ahead of when it actually happened, it's clear to me and plain as day.
He was never going to fight Artur. He was never going to fight Dmitry either.
The whole goddamn thing is a psyop to convince you that David wanted to fight these fighters while his actions tell another story. Yeah, sure, you petitioned the WBC to fight Dmitry Bivol, but you only did so when you knew that he was busy.
It's the only reason he did it for the optics.
As far as David Benavidez and his team knew, Dmitry Bivol would be preoccupied with either Michael Eifert, who was already his mandatory before you got there, or a trilogy with Artur, as far as David's team knew, and this is when they decided to petition the WBC to fight him.
They only did it because they knew that he was busy. And with Artur, it's even more obvious that you didn't want to fight Artur because you had your moment to do it after the yard fight. You went ahead and booked yourself another fight with another guy because you didn't want to fight him.
It's very obvious.
So now, as things often do in the American boxing scene, the situation has devolved into a bona fide case of he said, she said between Team Beterbiev and Team Benavidez as to who walked away from the fight, when for me, it's very obvious who walked away.
You don't need to be Columbo to figure this one out.
Now, the Benavidez faction of fans are trying to save face for that guy by talking up the Mikhailian fight as if anybody's gonna pay to see that. I can tell you, David did not do robust numbers with Zurdo Ramirez, because if he had, we would have heard about it by now. And now, you're about to fight an even lesser known fighter on what?
On pay-per-view?
Good luck. Good luck and see who you can sell that fight to. Good luck, put it together, and see who buys it.
Best fucking wishes.
So what he's doing now is attempting to collect all the other belts that Jai Opataya doesn't have as a means to try to become undisputed champion without him. But let me tell you that when Josh Taylor became undisputed, the Americans didn't really care.
When Inoue did it the first time, and Usyk to a lesser extent when Terence Crawford became undisputed at 140, they didn't care. So you think they're gonna care when David does it? I think they'll pretend to.
I think they'll talk up that accomplishment online without spending any actual money to see it happen, so let him go after the WBC title at a price point of $75.99. And let's see how many of these guys that like David so much.
Let's see how many of them buy it.
And if he wins, let him go after the red and gold title. Let him go after the red belt and see how many people buy that.
What's your point?
The fights David is trying to have are no substitute for the fights people want him to have.
Some of which the ship has sailed, and they ain't gonna happen. You're not creating commercial value with the fights you're trying to have, because those are not the fights people asked you to make.
You are at liberty to do what you want. It's your prerogative, but it's the audience's prerogative not to buy it. And trust me, they're not going to.
I think when the betting lines open on Benavidez versus Mikhailian, David will be the betting favorite, which is expected.
So it doesn't create an air of spontaneity. It doesn't create intrigue, and thus, it's greatly lacking the big fight feel, but still coming at the same price of a big fight, which it is not.
Didn't sell shit with his last fight, he ain't gonna sell shit with this one.
But do what you like, and pretend to be excited that David is fighting Noel instead of Dimitri, or Artur, or Jai. Talk it up. Do what you want.
That shit ain't gonna sell nothing.
You guys that are talking it up, you and I both know, even you ain't gonna buy that fucking shit.
People are fucking ridiculous.